Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Four Quarters Talk podcast with myself, Jack Brazil, and my co-host, as always, Josh Mazoke. Say what's up, bro.
Yo, what's up? What's up?
Without further ado, let's get straight into today's episode. There's been a bit of noise on social media recently following the Heat's rough start, the Miami Heat's rough start to the NBA season. They're currently 6-12. On the season after that famous finals run last year. Is it too early to call that a fluke, Josh? That's what I've been seeing on Instagram and Twitter. Some people labeling it as a fluke. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think the Heat have enough time. I think they'll make the playoffs. But yeah, I think there is a bit of truth because obviously they've been dealing with injuries. You know, they haven't had Jimmy Butler for almost a month. So there's things going on there.
Tyler Hero's been out as well.
Yeah, they've had a lot. They've been struck by injury and the COVID situation. Yeah, protocol situation. But I think there is a little bit of truth to the claims about it being a fluke, or at least being easier than it would have been in a regular year. So my first point, obviously, is that just how unprecedented their run was, because they were the lowest seeded team since the '99 Knicks to make it to the finals at a 5th seed. And part of that obviously has to do with the level playing field that there was. There wasn't any home court advantage, which allowed for that. You know, throughout the season, the reason why teams pay so much attention to home court advantage, because it does make a difference.
Yeah,
I mean, like, you have teams that as soon as they get clinch it, that's when they start to rest their players and things like that. So when you have teams that are working hard throughout the season to build up their record to the point where they'll get home court advantage, but then it's just completely stripped because you're in that isolated environment, all in the bubble, no flight, no plane journeys, everything's in the same place, every team there's no fans there to affect it. So yeah, that would help out, because a lot of people put like the asterisk thing on on the bubble situation, but I think for teams like LA, who, the Lakers, who eventually won, I think it hurts them more than it helps them, but it helps those lower seeded teams, because they're the ones that benefit more from not having to, play at the, favorite teams, home court, or have to travel as much.
I agree in some sense with what you're saying, that it's probably a fluke that they got there in a bubble year. I don't think if it was a regular playoffs, as you said, with home court advantage and all this, that they probably would have got that far. And obviously it's not looking like it's going to happen again anytime soon. But even me saying that, obviously they've been highly impacted by protocol and injuries. But calling it a fluke, I think, is a bit disrespectful. I think you can call it an opportunity they took, but I'm not sure if you can call it a fluke. Because if you look at the playoff bracket from last year, they obviously swept Indiana in the first round. Then they move on to the Milwaukee Bucks, who they beat in 5 games using that same defensive ploy that they used in the regular season to defeat the Bucks. So you've got to call that good tactical work by Eric Spoelstra. And then they move on to Boston, who have a lot more weapons, you could say, than the Miami Heat on paper. Their roster is probably a bit more exciting. They take care of them in 6 games. So I think that run up to the finals, I think if you're talking about, even getting to the finals, winning three rounds in a playoff environment, you can't call a fluke. I don't think. Maybe if you got through each in 7 games, but it's not like they weren't even being pushed to 7 games by any team. 5 games against Milwaukee, who were big favorites to go to the NBA finals, swept Indiana in the first round, took care of Boston in 6. So, it does show that they deserve to be in that spot, but also they did take an opportunity with probably the bubble helped them out of most teams, more than most teams.
Yeah, I do have to clarify my points. I mean, especially in the NBA, in the playoff setting in the NBA, there's no flukes. Like that sport, more than any other sport, is where you truly get the best teams winning, because you have 7-game series. You have to beat a team 4 times. That's not luck. There's no luck involved, and you can't penalize the Heat for being more focused than other teams. You had Jimmy Butler saying, "I'm not bringing any family. This is a business trip."
Yeah.
So yeah, taking advantage of that situation, of course, like you can't hate on that. I mean, there's nothing but respect. And as you said, beating the Bucks, there was a lot of tactical things that went into that probably would have happened anyway, but it definitely is a factor. I mean, there's a reason why there are barely any teams that come back from 3-1 leads, but the Nuggets were able to come back twice, becoming the first team to ever come back twice, because it's a lot less of a daunting task having to, win 3 straight when you don't have to worry about travel and you don't have to worry about the opponent's fans or anything like that.
So could you maybe call that one a fluke?
Yeah, I'm just talking about, when I put this topic down, I wasn't really, obviously the Heat were in my mind, but I was looking at, I had the Heat and Nuggets down here because they're probably two of the teams that benefit the most from it, and I kind of grouped them together. So I think obviously there were impressive feats, but it was definitely aided by the bubble situation. I wouldn't say fluke. I think fluke is a strong word, but I think they definitely benefited from that
But
more than they normally would.
I think as much as we're gonna, give LeBron credit for winning this title, we have to give that same credit to the Nuggets and the Heat. Obviously there is some memes saying the Mickey Mouse ring and all of this, and that is not a real ring. But at the end of the day, that's gone down on.
I think it goes against. I think it at the same time makes it more impressive for the Lakers and less impressive because my mindset is that not having home court advantage is an advantage to the team that wasn't going to have it more than it is and it's a disadvantage to the team, because the Lakers are probably one of the best home teams on a normal year with their fans in attendance. That's probably one of the strongest home court advantages that you can have as that team, in Staples Center. So I think not having that gives an advantage to the team that doesn't now have to deal with that. So I think it makes it harder because now you're having to beat teams that have more confident players, because in the bubble a lot of shooters were talking about how not having fans helped with kind of like even little things like depth perception of not having a reflection when you look at the glass or anything like that, and it helped shooters. A lot of shooters were out of their mind. You had Jamal Murray, you had Donovan Mitchell out of his mind, Robinson later on, and especially Hero. So you have players benefiting in that way as well.
Well, moving away from the bubble now and coming back to the current regular season, where did the Heat go from here? Obviously, as I said earlier, they've started the season 6-12. It's looking bad for them right now. But do you think a lot of those problems will go away once they get their leader in Jimmy Butler back, or do you think they'll be struggling to even get into the playoff race, like Paul Pierce has said?
Nah, we're a quarter of the way into the season. There are plenty of teams right now who have underperformed, whether it be injury concerns or whatever. But you have to cut them some slack here. Like, they need to get healthier. They need to get all of their players back. But also, they are a team who, I mean, we haven't really noticed it as much with the Lakers, but they had that short off season as well. They had that 70-game off season, so they're still obviously reeling from that, and they had injuries in that run as well, because they had Bam hurt, they had who else did they have hurt? Goran Dragic hurt. So they need to get healthier. I think writing them out of the playoffs is a complete overreaction, obviously, because there are certain the table right now just looks crazy right now. The standings are.
Yeah.
I don't think they're gonna last. We're a quarter of the way to the season. I think they have one thing that they do have going for them is that Bam was nowhere near a fluke. That was his coming out party in those playoffs. Started from that Celtics season, and he's only gone up from there. He's looking great right now. He's even added more of an outside shot. So having him, it's kind of a blessing in disguise. Having him take over for the team more and get more comfortable in that type of role.
Yeah, he's gonna be a person that the Miami Heat build around for their future, definitely. So they've definitely got that cornerstone piece in Bam Adebayo, even when Jimmy Butler moves on, because they're not exactly on the same timeline. But then again, obviously they've showed that they can both contribute to success now. I think Jimmy Butler coming back for this team will be huge. He's the one that sets the precedent for this team, I should say.
Yeah.
You know,
And then continue. Yeah.
and you've got more weapons coming back in Tyler Hero. So as things slowly start to integrate, people start to integrate back into the lineup. I think they should quickly move up the Eastern Conference rankings. But
yeah, they've got a great coach. They've got
overreaction.
great coaching, great culture.
Yeah.
They'll be fine. But then also going over the Nuggets as well, real quick, because they were one of the teams involved in that. That is something I'm definitely more worried about. I think they're not going to be as bad as they are now, but Murray is kind of regressing back to his inconsistencies that he's shown the last few years of his career. Because Jokic is a constant, but there's that. And then obviously, as we already mentioned 2 episodes ago, with their loss of Grant, losing Jeremy Grant has definitely had an effect on their defense. So it's going to be a lot harder for them to, replicate the type of run that they had.
Yeah, well, I think they might be being a little bit harsh on the Nuggets. I mean, they did just get a 4-game winning streak ended last night. So, that's signs of improvement. They sit at 5th in the Western Conference. I don't think they're the same team they were last year. The team that can come back from 2 to being down 3-1 twice. They're not as potent as that. But I don't think this is panic stations yet for the Denver Nuggets. I can see why that reaction has been held with the Heat, because their record would suggest that they're maybe in danger of missing the playoffs on paper. But the Nuggets are comfortably in that 5 to 6 range, and that's exactly where I expect them to finish.
They've been a constant in the Western Conference for the last 5 or so years.
Yeah.
But my thing is, following that run that they had last year, they were looked at to be maybe the best of the rising young teams. So to be able to build on that, they're definitely going to need a much more consistent Murray, because no one is expecting him to be 50 points per game, like he was in the Jazz series. But we were expecting him to show more consistency in the regular season.
Yeah, he's as much as Nikola Jokic is that number 1 star in that team, the Denver Nuggets front office would have definitely expected Jamal Murray to be that reliable 2 option that can get a solid 20 per night and help Jokic out as much as possible. Because at times when you watch the Nuggets, it does feel that Jokic is doing everything by himself. So the more help he gets, the more this Nuggets team will benefit. And it's kind of getting past that stage where you're thinking that it's rust from the shorter off season. It's kind of getting to the stage where, is this the Jamal Murray we can come to expect from this season? Donovan Mitchell kind of started to a similar way as Murray, but he's picked it up and is now back to the Donovan Mitchell we all know. But Jamal Murray hasn't been able to find his rhythm as of yet. And for a player of his caliber, a quarter of the way into the season, that should not be the case.
And you have to also think that he was even showing as spectacular as he was in the bubble. He was showing inconsistencies there as well, because he was part of the reason they fell into those deficits, those 3-1 deficits as well.
But an 11-8 record on the season so far, with Jamal Murray not being at 100% of his talent level so far, I think that's quite.
Yeah, they should find a way back, especially with Jokic playing at this level.
Yeah, it's not bad from the Nuggets. Let's move our focus back over to the Eastern Conference, and a team that's on the rise, a team that we spoke about a lot and that everyone's been speaking about a lot. The Brooklyn Nets, currently sitting 2nd in the Eastern Conference. I think when we last recorded, they were 5th. So they've gone on a 4-game winning streak here.
Won 8 of their last 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last 10, 8-2. They've had a few pieces moving in and out of the lineup. KD missed last night. And in last night's game, Josh, this firsthand. Your boys got torched for 147 points, tying the Brooklyn Nets and previously the New Jersey's Nets franchise record for points in a regular season game during the shot clock era. Did you watch that game? What did you make of it?
What I made of it, and not this game in particular, but when I first put down, when I first thought about this topic, was a takeaway from, every game they've pretty much played since they acquired Harden, is that they are prolific offensively. a few nights ago when they had Katie on the in the lineup still. They played against the Hawks and it was high scoring. Against the Cavs, high scoring. They combined for 89 between the big three.
Yeah.
Scoring isn't their issue, and also with Harden, he's looking a lot more comfortable, a lot less tentative than he was to start off. He's looking like he's really starting to get used to playing
For
alongside
offense, yeah.
the other two, and not really because the first couple of games he was kind of in the first half he wouldn't really take any shots, and then
It looks like he was trying to please some people almost.
Yeah, to prove that he'd pass.
Yeah,
and all of that, but he just needs to be himself, who they traded for. So, but yeah, their issues are defensively. I think they still have moves to make.
Mm-hmm.
Two players that have helped with both their depth and their defense are Jeff Green and Bruce Brown, who have been, they've been pretty good, reliable off the bench. Bruce Brown with his defense. Jeff Green has, kind of reprised his role that he had towards the end of his, tenure with the Rockets of being, a small ball type player.
Yeah.
A small ball center. So
well, it's no coincidence that Mike D'Antoni is the assistant coach, and they're resorting to that small ball. That's clearly a philosophy he believes in. And when you don't have that center depth, I think their backup center is Perry. What's his first name? Reggie Perry, who's first year player and at times looks kind of out of his depth. So resorting back to that small ball that D'Antoni knows can work for periods of games is going to be a real ace up the sleeve of the Brooklyn Nets that they can put out maybe when they're getting dominated on the inside. They can switch up the approach because DeAndre Jordan, he hasn't been great this season. Definitely looks like a player on the decline. And that's why there's been rumors flying everywhere about a trade for JaVale McGee, who I think would improve that interior defense.
I've seen Andre Drummond too.
Andre Drummond, a supposed buyout with the Cavaliers, which I can't see happening because the Cavaliers are in a playoff picture. Andre Drummond is playing for a contract. I feel like he's putting up good minutes on a playoff contending team, good stats. On a playoff contending team, he's contributing to wins there.
They might want to commit to Jarrett Allen.
Yeah, that is true. But at the same time, if they want to get into the playoffs, why would they drop probably their second best player this season? Andre Drummond might even be an all-star this year, so I don't see why they would buy him out. But it will depend.
I think that's probably assuming that they cool down at some point. But yeah, at this point, it doesn't look likely. But yeah, they're gonna need to address their size and their depth at the end of the day.
For sure. And I saw a report from Steve Nash. He said that they're definitely looking in the free agency market for another piece of the puzzle, because obviously they got that exception from the NBA for Spencer Dinwiddie being out. So they got that open roster spot. Do you have any names that you think could fill that spot in the roster that are currently free agents?
In terms of just depth, maybe defense, they could pick up a player like Iman Shumpert.
Yeah.
There's a couple there. I think as a whole, the NBA should really look to expand. I've seen, I think it was Kendrick Perkins that brought this point, that they should really be looking to expand their rosters to deal with these, protocol issues, because consistently it's going to get to a point where it's going to be hard to keep postponing games. Yeah. And if they have rosters that, looking at a bit more closer to 20 to 22 players on a roster rather than, 15, that will allow for a lot of these games to still go on. But yeah, there are players out there like an Iman Shumpert that. I'm
just looking at a current free agent chart. You got names like maybe get a Ball brother on the roster, LiAngelo Ball. That's obviously not gonna happen, but. Just throwing out there.
Right, insert Corey
Brewer. Maybe.
Corny steals jokes about Jellos.
You got Damari Carroll, Wilson Chandler, Tyson Chandler's here. I'm not sure if he's retired, but maybe for a bit of length. Alan Crabb, Dwayne Dedmon's here. There's a few different.
There's some interesting. Obviously,
it's not anyone that's going to come in and completely transform this team overnight.
I think they have enough firepower to be fine for the regular season,
Yeah.
and then they can kind of address it during that buyout period or that trade period. Well, more so buyout period because they don't have much to trade right now.
Rondé Hollis-Jefferson as well. He is a former Brooklyn net, obviously. Can give you that defensive edge as well. Yeah, there's a few options out there, and I'm sure they're extensively looking at that market. But as you said, you know, this is a team that will probably thrive in the regular season. It's just a question about the playoffs, and we're excited to come to that and see if they can deliver. Let's move back over to the Western Conference, where we can talk about another hot team. In fact, the hottest team in the NBA right now, the Utah Jazz, who are on
11-game
win streak. Currently find themselves sitting atop of the Western Conference with a 15-4 record. And the thing that's really impressed me about the Jazz, especially over the last two, obviously they've been without Donovan Mitchell for the last two. He's in concussion protocol right now. That kind of crept up on everyone. I didn't really see that coming, but they didn't falter with their star man out of the lineup. They had back-to-back against the Mavericks, and they blew them out in both occasions. Especially, Rudy Gobert really stepped up for this Jazz team. First game, he was a monster, 29 points, 20 rebounds, really repaying that $200 million contract there. And then in the game last night, the Mavericks never really got started at all, kind of made it easy for the Jazz in a sense. And the Dallas Mavericks are also a cause for concern. They're on a 4-game losing streak right now.
Yeah.
Luka Doncic was saying in his press conference that he's not sure if people on this team really want to win, which is a cause for concern as well. Have you watched much of the Jazz, Josh? What's impressed you about this run?
Steve Kerr said, which is interesting when they played them, that he gave them a very good compliment in saying that they look like us, a few years ago before we rose to our dominance. But the main things about this that I've seen, the Jazz tend to go on these annual, winning streaks and runs in the regular season. But the difference right now that it's looking like there is right now is Mike Conley has really
stepped up.
He's kind of found his place on this team. Right now he's the leader in plus minus in the league.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Clarkson, who is looking like a 6th man of the year candidate. He stepped up. He's really stepped up in Donovan Mitchell's absence.
Yeah.
But also the squad are just dominating on both ends. They're top 5 in both offense and defensive rating, and they've got 6 players who make at least 2 threes a game, and as a team they're shooting 40% from 3. So that's a lot. That's that adds up to success right there. And Quinn Snyder has been, he's been big. He's been a great coach for them for quite a while, and his new philosophy going towards encouraging the team to shoot a lot of threes. That's had a lot to do with their success right now.
Yeah, they're just to go into a few more stats. They currently lead the league in point differential, which means they're obviously solid on both ends of the court. And they're having their best offensive season in franchise history. As you said, their 3-point shooters are firing. Everything's going right at the moment for the Jazz. The question, as always, with the Jazz is, can they translate that into off-season success? Obviously, they blew that 3-1 lead to the Denver Nuggets in the bubble last year. And I'm going to pose a question to you, Josh, that I've from an article I was reading earlier. And I think I know what your answer is going to be. But are the Utah Jazz title contenders? Are they legit? Is this deeper than just a hot streak?
Yeah, I was going to go into this. So there are things that look sustainable about this. I think Jordan Clarkson has started to rise over the last few years. Into that niche of being that off the bench scorer, that microwave. And then you've got Conley, who last year he was kind of having a down year. That was out of his character. And he, in the playoffs, he started to, get back to where he was. And now he definitely is showing the impact that the Jazz were looking for when they acquired him. But the two things I look at are shooting 40% on several attempts per player, that is not entirely sustainable. They might go a
Yeah.
bit further down, and that might have a lot to do with their point differential. But they do have the defense with their offensive system is definitely working and producing those type of shots that they want, and their defense is definitely sustainable. That's why that's part of Gobert's impact and why he's making that hefty salary. But when I look at them, I just don't think they have they have a good team defensive strategy, and in Gobert, but they're a great team. But when you look at the teams that they'll have to go up against to be title contenders, I don't think they match up as great as they need to be, because you look at their perimeter defense. I don't think they have the type of defenders that you would need to guard a LeBron James, a Paul George, a Kawhi Leonard,
Yeah.
a
I think
KD, a Harden, and then they don't have, they're not stopping, Jokic seems to have great games against him, against Gobert a lot of the time, and then AD is just a mismatch as well.
Yeah. Well, I think as we mentioned earlier, the biggest difference maker for the Jazz this year has been Mike Conley stepping up. Obviously, there's going to be a question mark of whether he can continue this form.
I believe he will.
But if he can, this will go down as probably the best year of his career, or one of the best. And also, they are shooting the three at an extremely efficient rate right now. Can they continue that percentage of three-pointers made? Who knows? But the interesting sign for me and the encouragement that I have from this team is that it feels like a team effort every night. There's not one guy going off for 40 every night. Even with Donovan Mitchell out, as I said earlier, they still got wins against the Dallas Mavericks, who are no pushover. So that makes you think, they've got lots of pieces that are contributing. You've got Bogdanovic that's contributing. Joe Ingles is contributing. Royce O'Neal is quite a good defender. You got a solid bench. So it feels like a really well-rounded roster. And that's what the Jazz have had for these past 5-6 years. But, the question is always going to be the playoffs with this team. No doubt, I think there'll be a top 4 seed in the West, maybe even a top 3 seed up there with the 2 LA teams. But yeah, the question is always going to be the playoffs.
They're greatly built, and they execute at a great rate. But the problem is they're going up against talent, generational type talent.
Yeah.
There's several teams built with multiple superstars. And so that puts them at that, second tier rather than that, title contender type. So I think we need to see more. We need to see, it has been, a quarter of a season, but we're going to need to see a little bit more sustainable play before, we see potency to really go against the Lakers or the Clippers or the Nets or even the Sixers.
Yeah. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum then. The Jazz are the best team in basketball right now, but the Wizards are the worst team in basketball right now. They currently sit at a 3-12 record. Obviously, they missed quite a few games with protocol and stuff like that. But even since they've come back and had Westbrook and Beal back, they have looked awful, just awful. By far the worst team in the league so far. With the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves have been terrible as well. But this is not what we were expecting from this Wizards team. We weren't expecting a 3-12 record quarter of the way into the season. People were going to hope, especially Wizards fans, that Beal and Westbrook could gel straight away, kind of like what we saw in Houston with Westbrook and Harden. But that just hasn't happened at all. Westbrook has looked awful to start the year. Obviously, he did play really well last night. But even still, that was in a loss. So, Bradley Beal just looks dejected every game. When asked if he's frustrated with the team's performance, he simply replied, "Is the sky blue?" So that tells you everything you need to know. There was that worrying stat. I'm not sure if I have it exactly here, but it was
It's about the scoring.
yeah, it
It's
was something
40.
like
Yeah, he's lost 10 games in a row,
yeah.
scoring his last 10 games in a row, which he scored 40 or more.
Yeah, and this is weird to me that Bradley Beal is still adamant, and he obviously signed that contract recently. He's still adamant that he wants to win in Washington, which from an outside looking in doesn't look possible in the near future. He's probably in the back of his mind thinking to request a trade any minute now. Um, do you see a way the Wizards can turn this around, or is this the way you think it's going to go for the rest of the season?
Yeah, just outlining. I will finish obviously with this season, but just outlining, Bradley Beal's frustrations over the last couple of years, because this extends past this season. Probably over to when John Wall suffered his injury, is that a lot of his scoring has been, in losing efforts. He hasn't been rewarded in ways that someone that as prolific as him would be. He didn't make the All-Star team, didn't make All-NBA teams, despite being, top 3 in scoring. And he's leading the league in scoring right now, but there's possibilities that, he likely won't start in the All-Star game, but he might not even be an All-Star just because they pin that losing against you. But so they've had issues, with especially defensively. This team has had a lot of issues. Scott Brooks is a bit suspect. Well, he's very suspect as a coach. Going back to, I know too well as a Thunder fan. But this season in particular, people thought that, last year they were terrible defensively, but they had, a great offense. And this year they've been anemic offensively as well. It's been a mixture of things, obviously, with injuries, to Westbrook and losing Thomas Bryant, Denny Avdija.
Travis Bertans has been out as well.
So they've just had this year has been, just everything that could go wrong has
gone wrong. But at the same time, performances haven't suggested that they can even turn this around.
Exactly. My point is that even if I feel like it would just delay the inevitable. Even if Westbrook played as well as he played last year, or everyone's playing to their potential, I think their ceiling would still be, a lower seeded playoff team.
Yeah.
And is that what Bradley Beal wants, long term? I think.
Well, he said he wants to win in Washington, hasn't he?
Yeah, like that's just not likely. I don't, because Russ has had issues with his, with his efficiency, with several things. I don't think he'd play as bad as he has, if he wasn't as injured. But at the same time, that adds to it. That adds to the fact that they haven't been able to get the talent, address the things around the two of them. For them to have much of a ceiling anyway. Their potential isn't that high, even if things were going right. So this might just, tell Bradley Beal that, maybe it is time. It is time to request a trade.
Well, the Russell Westbrook with each passing day looks like a very expensive mistake from both sides. The Wizards haven't been able to get the best Westbrook they wanted. Obviously, that is partly down to his injury issues, but he looks like a player that's on the decline. He has a game that I think everyone knew wouldn't really translate well into later into his career. It was very driven by his athletic ability, and putting in 100% effort. But I'm guessing the idea behind trading John Wall for Russell Westbrook was to stay competitive and stay in the playoff hunt, and they're a million miles away from that right now. So it's an expensive mistake from the Wizards side. Russell Westbrook is making a lot of money. But at the same time, Russell Westbrook is wasting some of the prime years of his career. It seems like at least in Houston, he was in a winning spot. But with the Wizards, he's traded that in for looks like a lottery team. And if Bradley Beal does get traded, he's going to be stuck there. And with each passing game, with these poor performances he's been putting in, his trade stock is taking a big hit. So the likelihood that the Wizards are going to be able to get anything, close to Westbrook's value, is diminishing with each passing game.
Yeah, I think the trade does look bad now, but when I look at the trade, I focus in more on the fact that they gave up their lottery pick as well, which could end up being quite valuable. But in terms of just the Westbrook against John Wall, or the Westbrook requesting the trade, I'm sure that he requested the trade knowing, what was coming, after the management decisions that were made in Houston, and I'm pretty sure he made the trade knowing that both him and Harden would be gone in the imminent future. So I don't think either spot would have been great for them. I think if Westbrook was more healthy, it still wouldn't have been the greatest situation. I think even if they had John Wall right now, if the Wizards had John Wall, they would still be bad, because I don't think Westbrook is. I mean, at this point, maybe Westbrook's definitely part of the problem, but I don't think he's the root problem, which is their defense and their coaching. Uh, they don't have great defensive plans. They don't have great, overall strategic plans. So it's just they don't even get the full potential out of the team that they do have. So the fact that they have, on any given day, you see Bradley Beal playing with just a bunch of G League players towards the bottom of their rotation, which is not great right now. And then you've got Westbrook sitting on back-to-backs because he's clearly still hurt. It's just it's a bleak situation.
It's a bleak situation for Wizards fans out there. Let's talk about the flip side of that trade quickly with the Rockets. The Rockets obviously acquired John Wall in that trade, and now they're fronting a big three of John Wall, Victor Oladipo, who they acquired in that blockbuster James Harden trade, and Christian Wood, who who looks really good this season. With the Rockets, personally, it looks like a team that's going to be in and around the bottom of the playoff picture. In that 7, 8, 9 realm. And the problem I've got with this team is that I don't think they're giving Christian Wood enough touches. I think Christian Wood should be the star on this team. I think he's the most talented right now out of those three. And they're not feeding him the ball as much as they should be. He's a very efficient player, so he's still putting up good stats. But those could be even better if he got more of the ball. Obviously, John Wall has been coming back to the lineup. He's looked solid since he's returned. Still questions over Victor Oladipo. He seems like he's quite streaky at the moment. Not the all-star we once knew. Where do you see this team finishing the season, Josh?
To be honest, I don't care. I think I think regardless, I think they're just heading to the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
As a franchise, it's not looking too great.
They're in limbo.
I think a lot of what they put together was with the idea of hoping that they could keep Westbrook or at least Harden. And right now they're kind of in limbo. They're scrambling right now. Oladipo doesn't look as invested as you'd want him to be. There's a lot of these rumors about him to Miami being a done deal, pretty much. So, and the timelines just don't fit as greatly as you'd want to. So it's just they could narrowly miss the playoffs, or they could make it, just to get swept, but. It's not a great situation at all. I mean, as bad as their situation is, they've still somehow, won the trade, I guess, which just kind of says it all.
Sums it all up, really.
They're just a better loser at this point, really.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it, a better loser. And I guess the positive you can take from this is that they've now got a franchise piece to. If they were looking to blow it up, they've got that franchise piece in Christian Wood that they can build around. At least they have that. So there is a bit of direction for the future. But, John, I feel like they've kind of lodged John Wall and Victor Oladipo into that starting lineup, into that team, just to kind of have a big three almost. They're just trying to acquire as much talent as they can. And I'm not sure for what purpose, As we said, it is a limbo right now.
In my opinion, they definitely should have pushed for a harder reset. Acquiring a player like Ben Simmons.
Yeah, they should have acquired some future assets from these two deals, the Harden deal and the Westbrook deal. They should have looked towards the future, but they didn't, which was a strange choice. So I feel that's probably from a GM's perspective, a failure. Obviously, they have a new front office going into this year. Daryl Morey obviously left his standing there to go to the Sixers. So maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's inexperience from the front office. But yeah, that doesn't. It looks like a weird situation down in Houston. I feel like they're a team that could do well. They could go either way. I think they could do well and surprise a few people, but they could be disappointing as they kind of have been so far. So we'll keep an eye out on the Rockets. I've watched a few of their games this year. They don't look they're not a terrible watch.
No,
But yeah, it's just I think
it's kind of the middle of nowhere type.
they're still figuring out their
No
roles as
man's
well.
land. Yeah, they're kind of like a in no man's land type of team right now.
Yeah, but I think that's all we've got for today. A comparatively quick one to what we usually put out, but sometimes you just got to put out the quick ones. Not everyone has 90 minutes out of their day to listen to us ramble on about basketball. So there you go. Thank you for tuning in as always. And we're out. Peace.